Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. We'll go ahead and jump right into it with today's guest. So the first question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Brandon Edwards. I'm the CEO and founder of a full-service marketing agency headquartered in Nashville called ReviveHealth. We will turn 11 on September 1st, and as you can tell by our name, full-service agency focused exclusively on healthcare. Our clients fall into the hospital and health system industry sectors, health services, and health technology.
Great. Well, question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
I think I can't pick one thing, and I've thought a lot about this since you warned me what some of the questions were going to be. I think it really is 2 things. One is I really think that working with other people makes us better. I think that there isn't anyone that's good at everything, and I think it's actually one of the great fallacies of grade school and junior high and high school is we're forced to do everything as opposed to really focusing on those things that we're better at. But working with other people lets you surround yourself with others that will make you better. I think the second is if you choose well, you also get to spend all of your time with people you really like. And I've been lucky enough to do that in my current role. Certainly not every job I've ever had, but in the current one, that's true.
That's always good to hear because I completely agree that allowing people to work in teams is a lot better than trying to do it on your own, and it is an added bonus when you get the people that you like. So that's great to hear. Third question, I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I look back at 28-year career now and 11 in the current role that I'm in, there have been seasons of that. I would say in general, though, I think if you're struggling too much to get people engaged, it's possible that maybe you haven't selected the right people for your organization. Either that or maybe you're not reflective enough to see where your gaps are as a leader in doing that. And Lord knows I have had mine over the years and have had good people around me that could point out what those gaps were. I think you have to recognize too, is like if you get a big enough group, and by big enough, I mean anything north of about 50, we're 101 people right now. If you get a big enough group, humans are always going to fall on a bell curve, right? And I think our job as leaders is to make that bell curve as skinny as possible so that there are very few outliers on either side. And the vast majority of people are sort of consistently engaged and part of a culture and part of a community. But there are going to be some people that fall on either side of that spectrum or perhaps are just relatively less engaged than their peers. I would say most of the time when I have found an engagement problem in a team I was leading, it was my fault, not theirs. I just wasn't properly articulating the problem, how we were looking at solving it, and empowering them to do it. And most of the time that I have people really engaged, it's because I've empowered them and gotten the heck out of their way so that they could do what they know how to do best.
Those are some really good comments that you had. So I hope that people will take note of that when they're listening to this, because those are some excellent comments about leadership and taking ownership and accountability, and just overall, I like that visual of having the skinny bell. So that's good. Thank you. Great comments. Next question. What other piece of advice would you offer to leaders of teams?
So I think it's going to sound so simple. You remember that there used to be that poster we'd see around places, all I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. There's probably some truth about that in terms of leading people and managing people. I think the first is, and this can be the most challenging for really busy, motivated, driven executives, is really caring about people and really caring about the people that work for you. And I don't mean in some esoteric way. I mean sort of meeting them where they are, knowing their lives, knowing the people that are in their lives. It's not about sending flowers to a funeral or a gift to a wedding, but it's really knowing them and knowing enough about them to care about them and vice versa. And I think maybe it's possible to be an effective executive without that. But my experience is that most of the truly effective executives and leaders I've known have that, even if it is with a very small number of people. Maybe it's their, just immediate direct reports. It might be 3 people or 5 people, not 100. But I think it makes a huge difference. I also think it probably goes back and ties to your number 2 question, which is other people make us better. So if we care about them, then they're going to be more motivated for us and vice versa.
I love that. And it's such a good reminder to all of us to reach out to those that we can and really care about them. And that right there will drive the engagement, just people know that you care. So great advice. Thank you. Next question. What other successful team leaders, or such as yourself, would you like to recognize or maybe kind of shout out a little bit as of having a good positive influence in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll point out some people I think are significantly more successful leaders than I am. That's probably the most important thing right out of the gate. It's actually really hard to narrow the list for me. I think I've been lucky enough over the years to work with a number of really amazing people. So probably the first one I would point to is when I was at the ripe old age of 23, I got to run a political campaign for a guy in Santa Barbara County named Brooks Firestone, who started Firestone Winery, and ultimately he and his son started what is now Firestone Walker Brewery. Very successful, and just one of the most amazing, calm, focused, kind leaders. I would like to think that most of the things I do well reflect him more than things that I figured out on my own. I admire a guy named Tony Signori, who's the CEO at a firm in New York called Taylor, a firm like ours, but not focused in healthcare. Tony's been an amazing mentor to me over the years, and a really sophisticated, savvy, hard-nosed business guy who still embodies caring about people and really meeting them where they are. Andy Polanski is the CEO of a company that owns my firm, bought our firm 4 years ago. Amazing guy. I think he's someone you can look at and say he's had this core team around him who've worked with him for like 15 years in an industry of 25 to 30% turnover a year. Pretty phenomenal. A number of hospital CEOs, probably too many to mention. I'll mention one, a friend named Russ Cox, who's a CEO at a health system in Louisville, Kentucky called Norton. And Russ is like the definition of servant leadership. Smart, hardworking, driven guy, a family guy, but cares about his people so much and shows it in everything that he does.
Well, those sound like great individuals, so thank you for recognizing them. Well, sixth and final question. Tell us about your first job.
So I wrestled with this one too, because I thought, is this my first job or my first real job? So my first job was 14. I worked in a factory for a company called Hellwig's, and they made overload springs and sway bars for RVs. I was 14 years old, worked with a bunch of guys that got high at lunch. It was an interesting learning experience, would be the way to articulate that, and just came home, filthy at the end of the day. But I wanted to work and I wanted to make money, and my parents were tolerant of that because they actually had to drive me back and forth to work. I was 14, too far to ride a bike. My first real job, I would say, was at, after college. I worked all through college at 3 jobs. But at 21 years old, I got my first real job coming out of college, working for a member of Congress in their district office, and did that for a year before I joined the campaign that I mentioned earlier for Brooks Firestone. So it was an incredible learning experience. Made very clear that I was not cut out for government. Like in about 5 minutes, it became very clear.
Well, that's some of what we learn with those early jobs is what we don't like. So that's a valuable lesson.
Exactly what I tell my kids, right? The early jobs are all about deciding what you shouldn't do more than what you should do. It really helps to narrow it down.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Brandon. We appreciate your insights and appreciate you being on the podcast today. How can people find you?
Our website is thinkrevivehealth.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And then my email address is be@thinkrevivehealth.com. So I'm sure I have a Twitter handle and don't know the name of it, and Instagram and all of those things. But I'm old enough that there are people who take care of that stuff for me now and make me look better probably than I deserve. So.
Well, I can certainly relate to that. So, thank you so much. This is Shawn Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great day.